Well, it has been decades in the making, and Detroit's new gateway to Canada is closer to opening. We're talking about the Gordie Howe Bridge linking Michigan to Windsor from southwest Detroit. We have seen some major milestones in the past few weeks. Those massive cranes that went up in 2020 to help build the bridge's structure, those are now gone. There are now signs directing you to the bridge up along I-75, and it's even on Google Maps. Take a look at this incredible new footage we got of the bridge from Drone 4. We are so much closer now to having another border crossing open in Detroit, and we wanted to get a kind of a status update, a progress report, so to speak, from the people in charge. That'd be the Windsor Detroit Bridge Authority. Their Chief Relations Officer, Heather Grondin, is joining us live. Heather, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, I got to ask, do we have a date yet? Do we know when the first vehicle gets to cross the bridge?
No, it's still too early just yet to have a specific date. I know a lot of people are interested. I get asked that multiple times a day, but we're still working on construction and still have a bit of work left to do before we can set that date.
Okay, so for the folks who have no idea how a bridge is built and what it looks like, what is still left? Because to the naked eye, to the untrained eye, it looks done to us.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was really the sense since we connected the deck in July of last year. But since then, there's still been a lot of work to do. So if we think about the bridge, it's been, the installation of electrical systems, the fire suppression systems, lighting, barriers, signage. But of course, we're not just building a bridge. We're also building the two largest ports of entry along the Canada-US border. And there's been a lot of work being done on both of the ports as well. If you think of the US port, it's 167 acres, over 300,000 square feet of building space. So there's a lot more work to do there.
We're looking at some brand new video that our drone caught, I believe it was last week, and the bridge just looks beautiful. I'm sure you probably have the same sentiment, but were you envisioning something so beautiful and so iconic, or is it even kind of catching you by surprise?
It is catching me by surprise. We saw renderings for years, and we showed the public those same renderings. And not until you see it in person do you really understand the magnitude, just as, exactly how big and how much it impacts the skyline, how you can see it from so many different places when you're driving toward Southwest Detroit or West Windsor on the Canadian side. And it really is breathtaking in a way that the renderings never could have presented it.
I am no engineer. I have no idea how this stuff works, but I'm always fascinated by it. How do you build a bridge like that, especially when you have much of the structure in the water?
Well, an interesting thing with Gordie Howe is actually none of it is in the water.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, a decision was made during the environmental assessment time period, recognizing how important the Detroit River is a tremendous corridor for trade and for the movement of goods. And so our piers are on the ground, but that didn't make our construction any easier. We actually had to dig all the way down to bedrock with these massive pillars that go all the way down to the ground to be able to support those towers that you see. So building on the ground, had its own process and our own considerations. Also during the construction, the question was asked, are we going to build from the water? So example, putting in panels for the bridge deck that would be lifted from cranes in the water. And in fact, the decision was made to build it from either side of the ground first and go over without ever having any vehicles in the water that would help our construction. And again, that was really thinking about our marine traffic and our partners who move goods through the river. So there were a lot of different considerations, a lot of different mechanisms or approaches that could have been taken. And ultimately, the approach was called a non-cantilever approach was used to build this specific bridge.
I have a million questions for you, and if you don't mind, Heather, we're going to take a very short break, about 90 seconds. When you come back, I want to talk more about the impact and all the jobs you created while you were building this as well. So we'll be back here in 90 seconds. Welcome back to Local 4 Live. We're back now with Heather Grondin from the Windsor Detroit Bridge Authority. Heather, thank you again for your time this morning. Okay, let's talk some of the numbers. I know that your team has been crunching these and looking at economic impact. How many jobs, how many people were working or still working on the bridge?
So in total, since we started construction back in 2018, we've had over 14,000 people who've been oriented to work on the project
Wow.
in any number of ways. You know, you think of the people who have been up on the bridge deck, you think of the people who are the crane operators. We have landscapers, we have pavers, we have people who are installing electrical. So really a wide range of people working on this project. And a number that we are very proud of is that 42% of those people have been from either the Detroit or Windsor, Essex area. And it really has been important to us to ensure that local workers, that local people, local businesses have had a role to play in the delivery of this project.
Wow.
And one other interesting number that you might like to hear is to date, over 19 million hours of work have gone into the bridge, the ports of entry, and our connection to I-75. So those people have really worked a lot of time and put in a lot of effort to get the bridge to this point.
It's unbelievable. We've got a live look right now at both bridges, Gordie Howe off in the distance there. Because it's so much further away, it seems bigger. I don't know if it's just the perspective we're looking at, but is the Gordie Howe taller than our existing bridge?
It is, it is. So our towers are about 720 feet. So to give you a point of reference, that's about the same height as the center tower at the Renaissance Center.
Oh,
And then
okay.
the distance from the river is about 150 feet. So if you go from the river to the deck, it's about 150 feet. And then the span is longer as well. So where the Gordie Howe International Bridge crosses over the Detroit River, the river is is a bit wider
Sure,
than where it
sure.
is at where the Ambassador Bridge
Right.
crosses. So our main span is about 0.5 miles. So that's just from tower to tower. But then the entire length, if you go from backspan to backspan, is about 1.5 miles. And it is the longest main span of any cable stayed bridge in North America and the 10th longest in the world.
Okay, so in terms of traffic and congestion, obviously we're building it because there's so many people traveling not only the tunnel but the Ambassador Bridge as well. In terms of numbers, how many are you expecting to be using the Gordie Howe versus the Ambassador?
Yeah, it's still kind of hard to say. It's a little early, but if we go back to our traffic analysis that was done in the early days of the project, so during our environmental study period, it was estimated anywhere between 40 to 60% of the current traffic that goes through Windsor, Detroit, will come to the Gordie Howe International Bridge, really ultimately taking advantage of that highway to highway connectivity that we're
Right.
going to offer. So for the first time, people are going to be able to cross from the US side and get to Highway 401 in Ontario without having to deal with traffic lights and that stop and go traffic.
Right, right.
And that's really one of the key benefits that the bridge is going to provide, as well as 6 lanes in each direction. And as noted, those large ports of entry where every facility, every inspection agency is going to be there located right at the ports.
Are you anticipating the majority of our truck traffic, the goods moving back and forth, to maybe use the Gordie Howe because it's a little bit wider and it's kind of built for that, looking at the different ports on each side?
Yeah, that really is who we anticipate will be using the bridge most of all. It is built understanding the very distinct journeys of both, commercial traffic and the commuters or passenger traffic that's going across the bridge. We have designated lanes for each type of passenger within our ports of entry. So it is designed for both, but we definitely anticipate that trucks will be using the bridge more
Gotcha.
than passengers who will be traveling.
Obviously, the bridge is born out of necessity because, so many people are traveling to and from. But is there a possibility we could see increased traffic, just the numbers overall going up because now we have more options? You don't have to sit in line for so long?
Yeah. Yeah, that certainly is the intention with the Gordie Howe International Bridge. Again, when we're thinking about why the bridge was constructed, there is that redundancy or that crossing choice. And it was also built for today's traffic capacity, but also looking ahead and thinking about how having this additional crossing option will encourage investment, encourage new businesses to the Detroit and Windsor area, encourage more goods to flow back and forth. And the great thing is that with all of the crossings that are going to be between Windsor and Detroit, there will be the ability to handle that increased traffic
Sure.
and handle it in a very efficient way.
Okay. So I know you probably don't want to give away all of your plans, but sometime in the fall when we're thinking Gordie Howe is going to open, what is that party and celebration going to look like?
We're still working on the details. Again, another question I get asked a lot, what is the party going to be looking like? I think that's really a reflection of the fact that, as you noted in the intro, this project has been underway for a couple of decades. The public has really embraced it, is really excited about the opening of this new crossing, and are really looking forward to, how we can mark this point in history with the bridge opening. So
Are,
still working on those details.
are there any traditions? Like I know when a ship gets commissioned, they smash a bottle of champagne out. Is it something similar for a bridge?
You know what? I've been researching that to see if there is something like based on that exact thought, and I haven't found anything specific for a bridge yet. So if anyone out there does know of a tradition, they can email us at info@wdbridge.com and tell us what that tradition is.
Maybe it's time to start a new tradition right now. You can
There
be a
we go.
trailblazer.
Exactly.
All right, Heather, thank you so much for your time. And I know we'll be spending a lot of time with you here in the next several months as we get ready to open that bridge.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care.